Thanks for joining. Welcome to the hosted telephony and unified communications webinar with our partners, RingCentral. I've asked everyone already to say hi in the chat box, and things look to be working correctly. There is also a Q&A box. I believe it's in the bottom of your screen. So if you do have any questions, if you want to put them in there throughout the course of the session, we'll be able to hopefully answer them. Just as a disclaimer, this webinar will be recorded, and we'll be sending the recording out after the session to all the attendees just for their records. My name is Thomas, and I head up the telephony team here at Netpremacy, and as a result, I work quite closely with RingCentral and their back-end teams. Joining me today, and you may have heard already, is Daniel Yin, who heads up the product and innovation teams for EMEA, and he'll be guiding you through the majority of today's session. The goal of today is to allow the attendees and IT leaders to have a soft introduction to hosted telephony and to see firsthand how it differs from the traditional on-premise solutions that you may currently be using. We'll touch upon several key points during the course of the session, including a brief introduction to RingCentral as a company, whereabouts they sit in the marketplace, and a look at why they have now been voted for 4 years in a row the leader in the unified communications as a service field. A look at the face of business communications and how that has changed over the past decade, and some of the challenges faced by businesses and dealing with this, the different solutions developed to overcome these challenges and how they are now currently being used within modern businesses, and a look at the differences between cloud communication and some of the legacy technologies that you all may still be using, such as ISDN, and what impact this can have on businesses. Now, originally we had planned to have a live demonstration of some of the requested features, but we have had so many different requests of features that we decided it was best, in an effort to keep the session running to time, to focus on the main elements of the technology. But if anyone is wanting to have a more in-depth look at the individual features, we're more than happy to do a one-on-one demo of any of the features that you may want to see that are more particular for your business. As mentioned before, the session is monitored by myself and Daniel, so if you do have any questions, please place them in the chat or the Q&A box. Thank you again for giving me time this morning, and I will now pass you over to the very capable hands of Mr. Daniel Yin to get underway.
Hi everybody, and very nice to meet you all, and thank you very much for that introduction, Tom. So like Tom said, I'm going to give you all a bit of a whistle-stop introduction to cloud communications and cloud telephony. We're going to really cover just the basics of how it might change your business, some industry insight, as well as a little bit about how RingCentral might solve your problems. If any of this is exciting or interesting to you, please do shout with questions. I'll stop around halfway through just to try and answer a few, and then also I'll probably finish around 1:45, so we'll have 10 to 15 minutes at the end to talk through anything else you might want to ask. If you are interested in anything, I'm not a salesman, so everything I'm saying is strictly technology and product. But if you are interested in learning more or anything further, please do contact my colleagues at Netprem to have a further discussion. So I'm going to start, like Tom said, with very quickly telling you about who RingCentral are and what we do, and I think that's quite important to start off with, because you need someone who understands the industry and understands the technology to really give you some of these insights. And RingCentral are doing very well there. This is the Magic Quadrant from from Gartner. Gartner are probably the largest and most influential technology analyst, if you don't already know of them, and they produce these magic quadrants to show for different technology segments who's doing well, who are the influencers, who are creating the technologies that are shaping the way that people are consuming them. And for the last 4 years, RingCentral have been sort of top right in the leaders quadrant. And we've been in that sort of prime position every year for the last 4. One of the reasons for that is that RingCentral invest pretty significantly into R&D. So we commit something like between 18 and 20% of our revenue figure right back into our product and development organization. So that's pretty significant. So we are always building the latest and best technologies for our customers and for the industry. What do RingCentral really build? Well, it really is just cloud communications, and we fit within this segment of the market that some analysts and some industry people call UCaaS, Unified Communications, where that really covers cloud-based telephony, video conferencing, web conferencing, collaboration tools like team messaging, as well as contact center. And actually, RingCentral only earlier this week, end of last week, announced an acquisition within that kind of general space. So we acquired, and I thought to take this opportunity just to mention that to you all. We acquired a company called Demelo, who build omni-channel technologies. So we really have an even richer and more complete end-to-end communication and contact center product set now. And again, if you are interested in the contact center side of the story, please do give Tom and the other guys a shout. So here's just some headline figures about RingCentral. All we're really saying here is that we're doing pretty well and hope to continue doing pretty well. We are bringing in 630 million in revenue. That's the annualized figure for the last quarter. Which is showing pretty strong year-on-year growth. So we are continuing to do that well and have a plan to be at $1 billion in revenue by 2020. So all of that really being funneled back into the product, building better and more complete solutions for our customers. So enough about the company, enough about the numbers and the money. Let's focus on the product. And I wanted to start by just kind of highlighting this difference in model between on-premise and traditional-based communications, which are often on-premise, and the cloud model. And to be fair, this is true of any cloud communications provider. But it's the start of the story to me, and we've got this kind of nice iceberg graphic for what on-prem and legacy communication looks like, because you really don't know a lot of the time quite how much you're investing both time and money in your existing systems. There are a lot of reasons for that, but it's for one, a fairly confusing pricing model. You don't know how many years you have to sweat CapEx assets. You don't know what the maintenance is going to look like year after year. And there are also a whole host of different vendors that you might be managing separate contracts and confusing contracts with. And you don't know sometimes how far that iceberg goes, not to mention in the long term all of the management and maintenance costs associated with physical kit with multiple vendors. And one of the nice things about a cloud-based solution is that it's simple. You get all-inclusive, all-in licensing for a single cost per user per month. So that's nice and neat. And a lot of the time that does work out to be significantly cheaper than on-premise. But like I said, it's often very hard to understand the actual cost of your business. one of the things that Tom mentioned earlier that I'd like to quickly comment on is ISDN PBX telephony. And that's really, as we see it, only one slice, probably the most important, but only one slice of the communications pie. And this table's a little bit on the nose with all crosses for ISDN, but I wanted to highlight to you that ISDN PBXs really are very much on the way out. It's an aging technology. It's not very feature rich, and it's got a few key downsides that I wanted to highlight to you, and it's something to consider while shaping your company's communication strategy. So not only are they on their way out generally, the Ofcom regulator is looking to turn off ISDN in the next few years, but it also places a lot of burden on the consumer themselves to plan for things like scalability, reliability, and availability. You would have to build your solution for those in yourselves. That's not available out of the box as part of what an ISDN PBX provides. And it's a very different model to how cloud telephony like RingCentral operates, where these kind of features are just part and parcel of how the product would operate. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into the actual way that we see communication. And the first thing to say, and this may be extremely obvious to a lot of you, and it may be something that you're all extremely aware of and just looking at how to deal with, but communication and how people work has changed. There's been a massive drive with working to be remote, to enable flexible working. And on the communication side, this is something that's changed a huge amount, certainly within the consumer sphere. So applications like WhatsApp, like Facebook Messenger, really have shaped how we reach out to friends and family. And it already highlights the start of this problem, that you have so many different methods of communication, all with different features, all with different capabilities. And there's a big spillover there into the business world, where typically, due to concerns like security and uptime, the actual features take a little bit of time to arrive. And this is kind of how RingCentral view the communication space. We kind of like to think of businesses with two main groups of people that consume communications products. And by the way, that isn't it. We know that there are other types of users with different use cases, but the majority of people and the majority of communications consumers fall into these two areas. So one is your actual end user. They take many forms, they have many different and varied needs, but end users, people who actually need to use communication tools. And the second flavor of person is your IT manager, the people who actually need to configure a communication tool, the guys that need to set it up, the type of person that's on a legacy system would need to plug in a new cable, provision a new phone, and put it on someone's desk. And these are the two kind of categories of people we generally are trying to solve communication problems for. And here's an interesting statistic. So we talked a little bit a minute ago about how consumers and in the consumer space had many different tools. We did a survey earlier this year and found this stat very interesting, that actually a massive proportion of people find that they waste a lot of time switching between their applications. Now that's, if you think about the the actual number of man hours that are wasted just because you've got different tools, and that's really significant to a business. So that's one of the problems that kind of we acknowledge as one that we want to solve. And I think core to that that problem is features. So one of the things we really recognize is that beyond telephony, there's a whole heap of features that we need to work. And so, listed there, we've got basic telephony, but then a lot of you, and I'd venture as far as saying that everyone uses email. Pretty much everyone uses some form of messaging or chat. But then there's also video conferencing, web conferencing, and screen sharing. And then slightly more recently, team collaboration, that ability to reach out to a rich and diverse team, share files and content. So the reality is that there's a lot that modern businesses need to actually do to communicate. So it isn't actually a trivial solution. It isn't actually a trivial problem to solve. Probably the key strategy that we've taken and we see being important to the communication space is unifying that experience. So to try and get around the fact that you have many different applications, you have many different interfaces, and time wasted switching between them, our idea is that communications should really be unified. And maybe that's a dead giveaway by the name of the industry, unified communications. But I think from what I've seen, there's been a lot of talk of the problem, but very few real attempts at solving this problem in a way that is both good for users as well as being a powerful and useful tool with actual features. And let me go a little bit further with describing how I think that problem should be solved. It needs to be consistent across all devices and interfaces, and that very much reflects the way that people work. A lot of people travel, they commute long distances, as well as working from different locations, and that inherently brings a mobility need. So all of these interfaces need to be optimized and even just available on mobile interfaces, but it also needs to be synchronized. You can't open a tool when you start traveling, for instance, and have the latest logs be from the last time you used that device. It all needs to stay in sync. It all needs to stay up to date with all the features. And the good news is that cloud generally is set up perfectly to deliver these sorts of solutions, keeping everything stored in the cloud, keeping all the intelligence in the cloud does make it a lot easier to support this kind of working model. And that's really the core of the product that RingCentral have built for the market, for our customers and new potential customers. The idea is that we would combine all of those features from Cloud PBX, which is probably the foundation, but then through to your messaging and collaboration, your video meetings, all through a consistent experience. Kind of two other points there about self-service and integrations that I also will touch on in just a minute. But what I thought I'd do is give you kind of a slide-based walkthrough of what that experience might look like. It's all good and well me saying unify your interfaces and it'll become easier, but I think kind of just showing you what those interfaces look like does give you that better view of what a product should be, and the experience that end users would really get. And as I'm going through, anyone, please do feel free to message, to send through some questions if you have any. And bottom left on my screen there is the RingCentral unified interface for a laptop or desktop device, and you can see that one of the things we're doing there is keeping documents, links, and sort of favorites all stored directly in line with the conversation. Kind of the benefit there is that you're able to collaborate very easily. Everything that you might want to share with someone else, either someone within your business or even someone outside of your business, is always there linked to the conversation. So very simple, but very neat and very powerful. And there's also integrated storage there as well. One of the things that we do and we see as being extremely beneficial is integrating with storage providers. So the idea is that as a business, you're very likely to have already moved some of your storage needs through to cloud providers, or you may still be consuming a premise-based solution, but that needs to link with your communication solution to give you a clean and simple experience. Just kind of think of the simple use cases of having a conversation with someone and then wanting to send them a document while also being able to reference back to that in line. Very simple, very powerful tools that just make it that little bit easier to communicate. And I've also highlighted on there conversation flow. So you can see from the RingCentral interface there, you can both share documents in line in a conversation. So you've got the ability to see in context what kind of documents you're talking about, but also your telephony is part of that is part of that same interface. So it's very easy to not have to context switch. And what about mobiles? So we mentioned that mobility is extremely important to the way many people work, and you need to present that consistent interface between devices. So you can see there that what we've actually done for mobiles is optimize the experience for a mobile device. You don't have the shelf, that sort of right-hand panel, or that navigation panel on the left. You have the core conversation, but it does reflect exactly the same things that you're talking to someone else about. And if you want to use those richer features, you've got an overflow menu in the top right to navigate your way through the files or the links that you might be sharing. And then lastly, on experience, you have the ability to, from a conversation that's purely either voice or message based, you're able to escalate directly into other forms of communication. So this example, and actually I think I've highlighted the wrong one there. I've highlighted the phone icon rather than the video icon, but you can launch directly into a video communication from that interface. And the idea is that you're not having to context switch between your tools. You're able to just single click and start communicating via a different medium. So again, all to do with the theme of unifying the experience for users, presenting all the features in a single, easy to use interface. So what next? And one of the things you might have been thinking is, well, that's all good and well for communication tools, but I know that my business doesn't just use communications. And that'd be a very, very fair observation. One of the things we're acutely aware of is that though our communication tools are good, they're not the be-all and end-all of my business. And the tricky piece there is that even the biggest and widest reaching providers don't have a solution to every single business problem. And what we're very keen to ensure is that we understand those divides very well, and that we build communications tools but don't try and solve other business problems. Our strategy there is to ensure we integrate with other people's tools. And we've had a question just on a very related topic here around G Suite, use of G Suite having transitioned to Chromebooks. And the theme here is very much that the RingCentral set of tools and RingCentral interfaces are available for any interface, not only via web, so you could access them on any device, but also integrated into any other platform. So what RingCentral do is build a family of integrations that sit very natively into other people's tools and offer the right sort of features and use cases that make sense there. So let me give you a few little examples of our most common used tools and how they may add benefit to your businesses. And by the way, it's not just RingCentral that build these tools. We also make our platform entirely open, which means that anyone can build a tool. So independent software vendors can build tools if they see the value, and probably more importantly than that, if you are a customer yourself who has a bespoke tool that you've built, you could integrate RingCentral's feature set directly in. So probably the three biggest and most used integrations are Salesforce, Google and G Suite, and Office 365. So we find that the CRM use case is particularly powerful, and we, from our research and working with our customers, we find that heavy CRM users generally are often very heavy CRM users. So think about a salesperson or a support person use case. If you do need a CRM, you tend to use it a lot. And the idea with our integration is kind of twofold. One, to sit RingCentral's telephony feature set directly within a CRM window, so in this case for Salesforce. And secondly, we can integrate beyond just UI. We have a feature where when you receive inbound calls, it'll pop up the Salesforce record associated with that number, so that instantly, not only do you have that phone call running, you also then know everything about that customer directly on screen. And then deeper than that, RingCentral would also add the call records from that conversation directly into the Salesforce entry. So the G Suite and the Office 365 use cases are very interesting too. They're very much productivity suites, and we kind of follow a twofold strategy with those. So one is that you could just run the single unified app alongside a productivity suite if you wanted to have your productivity suite separate. So you streamline your communication separate from your word processing and spreadsheet work, but especially with email, that there is a very strong overlap between the two. And in those sorts of scenarios, we can embed RingCentral Telephony alongside, and some of your other tools directly alongside your productivity panel. A couple of use cases there are that you might want to schedule a RingCentral meeting, a web and video and screen share meeting directly into Outlook, for instance, or Google Calendar, or you might want to launch from an email signature with a phone call by a single click directly into a phone call. So the theme here is very much in saving time and making it simple and intuitive to consume your communication products directly from whatever interface you might need. So let me pause there for a quick second, and guys, please shout if you have any more questions before I jump into talking about the admin and the setup side of communication products. Okay, I'll carry on, but please do feel free, jump in anytime with Q&As, and I'll answer either as we go or at the end. So shifting gear to the administrative side, one of the stats we saw last year to do with how communication and digital products generally, a minimum of 40 hours a month are spent by IT departments dealing with digital problems. Now that could be due to managing a vast list of suppliers, or just somebody maintaining a software platform. And again, think about quite how many man hours are really spent there. That's a week. That's a week a month of a person's resource purely dealing with problems. And that, by the way, is not setup. That isn't configuration. This is just dealing with problems. Here are some other interesting stats we got from one of those surveys we ran, just talking about how and what employers wanted in a communications tool. And this very much backs up the consumer-driven and way people work message that we were talking about before. But what we find is that a large number of the people we speak to are talking about flexible and remote working use cases. So times when their users aren't all going to be in the same place and can't speak face to face. And it's a little bit more than that as well. So I grabbed this screenshot of an infographic I saw recently about physical PBXs. So I thought it's quite an interesting one to show you all. But as well as just the pure use case driven and change of the way people are working, we're actually seeing that traditional PBXs have kind of got a lot of problems and a lot of inherent problems that don't really fit with the way people now want to work. And that stat and that quote at the bottom in the middle there is one I found particularly interesting. That sometimes you actually need someone who is explicitly trained to deal with these PBXs to do the work, and that not only means that you have to pay a lot to get your system set up, but it sometimes means, especially within big businesses, that you have to hire someone specifically with those pieces of knowledge to manage a telephony estate, which means more budget, less general resource to deal with other problems. It's an expensive job. And that kind of brings me on to this point, which is that there's no way in which traditional PBXs are suited to modern businesses. And summary of all the things I've mentioned already is that there's really two problems. One, they don't talk to each other. They can't work with each other over great distances and remote. So you're left with a real challenge in bringing in multiple vendors and multiple suppliers. But also, the features are wrong. Businesses don't run on just telephony today, as we've highlighted from the user stories. This is the model that we think a communications platform should run. And cloud is very much native, very much central to their technology. It enables a lot of the clever things we're doing. And it's also very feature rich. And actually, if I'm being honest, these benefits that I've listed across the top are true of any cloud solution. So this is as much a discussion around how the technology is providing change as much as it is RingCentral being able to solve your problems. But this kind of cloud first architecture enables you to provision anywhere in the world, access the product and the platform anywhere in the world, as well as getting sort of deep insights into those. And we'll talk a little bit more about all of those things in a sec. But because of the way it's structured, you're able to deliver those features, whether it be telephony, whether it be video sharing and conferencing, or messaging from any of those devices. We often talk about this term of over-the-top, OTT, which is central to how RingCentral and other cloud operators provide. It essentially means that you only need an internet connection to manage and consume your service. And that's quite different from the traditional PBX world, where you would not only need to have a telephony provider to actually bring in the lines to your door, you then might have to suffer from contention ratios where you have to plan the number of calls you might be working, but you then need a supplier for the physical devices itself, whether it be Avaya or Mitel, but better not give anyone else any free press. And then you need to maintain it. You need to hire someone else. So it's a much more complicated model. So that kind of leads on to key benefit number one of this cloud-first RingCentral also model, and it's that you can manage your platform anywhere in the world. So anywhere that you've got an internet connection, you can be a full site admin. And that means that you don't have to go to your office, you don't have to enter your login code to the server room and then start pulling and plugging cables. You can, via self-service, manage your platform anywhere in the world. And while this model is true of any cloud solution, RingCentral are very careful to empower our customers, so they are actually able to make the changes. That isn't just restricted to RingCentral personnel. And by the way, and something I probably should have mentioned before, our RingCentral's product is available for the full spectrum of business sizes. We have an e-commerce business that sells to 1 to 2 users, as well as to sort of 10,000 user plus size businesses, all of which have a sensible and intuitive interface, no matter the size of your business. We do go a little bit further with this simple management story. So two of the things that RingCentral bring to the table in addition to that kind of manage anywhere model, one is around custom roles and responsibilities. So we've built an access model that gives different users different permissions and capabilities. So you might want to think about use cases where you've got different offices across the world, or even just 2 different sites down the road from each other, and you only want an admin perhaps, or a secretary perhaps, to have access and visibility over the pool of users in their local site. So we built a permissions model that enable you to do that. And another use case there might be splitting out responsibility for the billing and provisioning to one team, and then the analytics to another team. All of that sort of stuff is very simple to do from the RingCentral platform. And lastly, we do fully integrate with a whole host of business tools that are common across IT management. So single sign-on, we are fully standards compliant with SAML 2.0 single sign-on, as well as Active Directory, which we find is extremely common, especially probably amongst larger businesses, to manage your starters and leavers process, and also your directory, your user directory. And I thought I'd just also give you an example of a customer that solved some of their business problems with RingCentral. So Box, if you haven't heard of them already, are a multinational company. They are headquartered in Silicon Valley in the US, but they have offices worldwide, all who previously used different separate communications platforms. And the real one I wanted to highlight here was that they actually used more than 10 different communications products. And you guys might well be familiar with a similar kind of setup. They used WebEx for their meetings. They used Zoom for their screen sharing. They used a separate telephony provider and different mobile providers. They used a lot of different platforms. And what RingCentral were able to do is go in and say to them, here is a single platform you can use to consolidate that experience, replace all those vendors, so much less management, and it can be the same platform deployed for all of your locations worldwide. So replacing 10 and then even more worldwide vendors with a single vendor, while also improving the experience for those end users. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is business insight. So one of the things that we often see with businesses is they want to understand what not only their users are doing, but they want to understand their customers better. And this is another flavor of the day in terms of current technology trends, but data and big data and data analytics has become increasingly important to companies. One of the things that not only a cloud system but RingCentral help you do is get that insight into what your users and what your customer calls look like. It's very simple to get the raw data, but also we provide a set of tools that allow you to graph what's going on, show historical usage, and also live reporting. So one of the very interesting use cases of live reporting on what your agents, what your customers are doing, is replacing low-end contact centers. So it's actually very easy to provide a simple contact center with simple telephony functions. And lastly, I wanted to touch on quality of service, which is, I think, key to any organization of any size. It makes no sense and it's of no value to talk about advanced function, use cases, and tools if you don't have the quality of service to back that up. And actually, especially perhaps 10, 15 years ago, there was a negative perception around OTT tools. But we've got a multi-layered strategy for ensuring that call quality and quality of all the rest of the feature set, but especially real-time communications, is better than what you get from dialing a number on a mobile phone. So not only do we have a layer of adaptive voice technology, we use industry sort of best of class codecs to carry our actual media. We actually then layer on a set of quality of service tools that make it very easy to analyze what's going on within your networks, identifying where and why problems are occurring. With voice, we call this our QRS monitoring portal. It gives you down to the individual call and the individual issues on that call, an understanding of why a call might have gone badly. Then that's down to individual call legs, down to individual access networks. So it's very easy to identify problematic areas of your network. And by the way, this is all over the top. You don't need physical network probes. You don't need someone to come out to your site and help you set up your equipment. So that brings me on to probably this is my last slide before we go into an open Q&A. But all of this is very reliant on quality of service. All of this doesn't make any sense unless everything that we're talking about, these clever features, these clever user interfaces, aren't built on a world-class and enterprise-ready platform. So I thought I would just very quickly talk you through some aspects of a truly enterprise-class solution. So on the left there, high scalability. It's extremely important, especially with rapidly growing businesses, that a solution like this can scale to customer needs, that it can in real time allow you to add users no matter where they are in the world. It's extremely and reliability, and that's kind of the point on the right is also extremely important. So one of the benefits you get from cloud architecture is that scalability is inherently redundancy is inherently much easier to build in. RingCentral ourselves, we operate over multiple different European data centers, all of which run in an active configuration, so there is zero downtime, even in the case of extreme disasters. And that's backed up by a 24-hour NOC team and support team. So no matter time of day, time of year, there's always maximum availability of service. And that availability of service is again useless unless it's high quality. We talked about that a little with our standards-based QoS tools, but it's also down to our network peering. So RingCentral ourselves have built out a worldwide network that allows very sort of short path of communication from wherever you are in the world to a RingCentral network. So you should get extremely high quality wherever you're based. And lastly, security. So one of the challenges you sometimes face with on-premise and legacy PBX systems is that you're always out of date. The time at which your system was was cutting edge and latest released was whenever the last release came out. And not only does that mean you've got issues with patching it, security updates in real time, you might need someone to actually come out and perform maintenance on your server. Maybe that even includes downtime, but then you've got to worry about it going end of life, end of support for systems. It's an extremely different model to the cloud, where we're actually able to push the latest day-to-day security updates seamlessly to you, your customers, and your users. But also, we do invest very heavily in making sure that we not only get those updates out to you, but we make sure they're all you're already protected with the highest grade of encryption, as well as protection in transit. And with that, that's me done. So hopefully that is a great introduction to the world of cloud communications for you. Like I said, myself, Tom, and the other Netprem and RingCentral guys will be around for another 10-15 minutes to handle your questions. Please feel free to shout anything you want. I think we've just got some come in, which we'll answer in a sec. And if you are interested in having a further conversation, learning a little bit more about communications problems, and if you've got particular business challenges you'd like to bring to us, please do reach out to the Netprem guys. Thanks. And I've just got a question in. So the question is around, and let me just read the question. So does RingCentral allow for physical phones on desks? And if so, are they compatible with Office Serve products, or would it require new handsets? Great question. A very, very interesting one. So yes, RingCentral do support physical desk phones. One of the things that, and we mentioned this before, there are a lot of different use cases. We get that a lot of people still like physical phones and dedicated devices, so of course we support them. Out of the box, RingCentral support a whole bunch of Polycom, Cisco, and Yealink handsets, but we can support others, maybe in some occasions with lower functionality, depending on the device itself, and sometimes it may also require what's called an ATA adapter if it's kind of an old-fashioned connection. So love to follow up with you and talk a little bit more about what those handsets are, but it's almost certain that there's a way of making them compatible.
Again, just sort of reiterate on Daniel there is a lot of options we can do to sort of reuse your existing infrastructure hardware. Obviously, depending on the size of your company, if you do have a few hundred handsets, there are, as Daniel mentioned earlier, certain things that we can do to make you sweat that asset a bit more. But it is worth mentioning as well that RingCentral do offer both a CapEx and an OpEx model. If you did want to refresh all your handsets, that is something that can be added on and be spread out over a monthly term to make that transition a little bit more palatable, I guess, if you want to use that phrase. But yeah, it certainly can be done. Any other questions at all at this point? So it doesn't look like there is anything else. So with that in mind, I would say this session's been brought nicely to an end. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Daniel for helping with the webinar and giving up his time to walk through the RingCentral platform and touch on some of the technology of the cloud-hosted styles. I'll be following up over the next couple of days to get some feedback on how everyone found the session and to answer any further questions you may have. But thank you all once again for giving up your own time, and I will catch up with you all individually at some point soon. Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys.